Commander Trasvar adjusted his optical sensors, the purple light of his compound eyes dimming as the system recalibrated to the jungle moon's atmosphere. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And as the commanding officer of Ghost Pattern 9, the Galactic Confederation's most elite reconnaissance unit, it was his duty to determine exactly what that something was. "Signal analysis complete, Commander," Kelvash said, his voice vibrating through his thoracic communication apparatus. "We've confirmed the transmission originated from this location." Trasvar nodded, the motion causing his armored exoskeleton to whir softly. The year was 2457, and tensions between the Galactic Confederation and the Human Alliance had reached a critical point. This uncharted jungle moon in disputed Sector Q-17 was supposed to be uninhabited, a buffer between their territories. Yet at precisely Oro 3:27 Standard Time, Listening Post 7V had picked up an unusual communication signature. "Play it again," Trasvar ordered. The audio crackled through their neural interfaces. "Eagle Patrol, rendezvous at Waypoint Bravo for night maneuvers. Bring combat rations and signal mirrors. Over." The voice was juvenile, higher-pitched than adult human vocal patterns, yet structured with unmistakable military precision. "Your assessment, Velik?" Trasvar turned to his intelligence officer. Velik's antennae twitched in what the commander recognized as deep concern. "It appears to be a human child, sir. But the terminology and communication protocols are consistent with military training exercises." "Children? In a militarized zone?" Darvak, their weapons specialist, clicked his mandibles skeptically. "Even humans aren't that reckless." "Unless," Threx offered, her exoskeleton shifting color slightly as she processed the implications. "They're training them. We've intercepted intelligence suggesting humans start military indoctrination early, but never confirmed a facility this close to GC space." Trasvar's inner membranes closed briefly in contemplation. The implications were disturbing. A human commando training facility for juveniles, operating this close to Confederation territory, would constitute a significant escalation, possibly even a violation of the Proxima Centauri Accords. Silent insertion," he finally ordered. "Full stealth protocols. We observe only. I want confirmation before we report back to Central Command." The 6 members of Ghost Pattern 9 acknowledged the order with practiced efficiency. Their recon craft descended through the thick atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to all but the most sophisticated detection systems. As they neared the surface, the dense jungle canopy emerged through the viewport, a sea of violet and blue vegetation stretching across the horizon. "Atmospheric composition within acceptable parameters," reported Vesh, their environmental specialist. "Gravity at 0.87 standard. Temperature at 26.3 degrees. Conditions optimal for extended reconnaissance." Trasvar nodded, already mentally mapping their approach. "We'll establish a perimeter at these coordinates. 3 teams, standard triangulation pattern. Report any unusual activity immediately, but maintain silence unless absolutely necessary." The craft touched down in a small clearing, the landing struts adjusting to the uneven terrain with hydraulic precision. One by one, the members of Ghost Pattern 9 activated their personal cloaking fields and disembarked, their movements silent and methodical. "Remember," Trasvar said as a final instruction, "these are potentially human juveniles. We observe only. No engagement unless directly threatened." With that, they disappeared into the alien jungle, their advanced exoskeletons adapting to the environment, blending with the surrounding foliage. The hunt had begun. Kelvash moved through the dense undergrowth with practiced ease, his sensory array constantly scanning for signs of activity. 2 hours into the reconnaissance mission, he detected movement approximately 300 meters to the northwest. "Commander," he subvocalized through their secure channel, "I've located what appears to be a perimeter defense line." "Describe," came Trasvar's immediate response. Primitive but effective. Tripwires at varying heights. Pressure plates disguised as natural ground formations. And... Kelvash paused, his optical sensors zooming in. Sir, these are being installed by small humans. I count 8 juveniles. Estimated age between 10 and 14 standard years. Maintain position. Continue observation, Trasvar ordered. Kelvash acknowledged and settled into a monitoring stance, his exoskeleton shifting to match the surrounding vegetation. Through his enhanced vision, he watched as the human children worked with surprising efficiency, checking sight lines, concealing their defensive positions, and communicating through hand signals that Kelvash recognized from the GC's database on human military protocols. One of the children, slightly taller than the others and wearing some kind of decorated fabric across its chest, appeared to be directing the operation. Its voice carried clearly through Kelvash's audio receptors. Eagle Patrol. Remember to camouflage those snares better this time. Wolf Patrol spotted them too easily during yesterday's exercise. We need natural materials, not the synthetic rope. And check your angles. A proper trap should only be visible once it's been triggered. The other children responded with a synchronized, "Yes, patrol leader," before continuing their work with renewed focus. Kelvash felt his thoracic cavity contract slightly, the closest his species came to a shudder. These were not simply children at play. Their movements were too precise, their organization too structured. This was military training, executed with a level of competence that disturbed him deeply. He was about to report these additional observations when a sharp crack beneath his third left appendage broke the silence. He looked down to see a seemingly innocuous twig had snapped, one that hadn't been there moments before. "Intruder!" came a young voice from somewhere to his right. Before Kelvash could react, a net of woven vines erupted from the ground beneath him, ensnaring his limbs and hoisting him 3 meters into the air. His cloaking field flickered and failed as the organic material interfered with its projection matrix. The last thing Kelvash transmitted before communication was cut off was, "Commander, I've been..." Then silence. Darvak received Kelvash's truncated transmission and immediately altered his course, moving swiftly through the jungle toward his comrade's last known position. As the unit's rescue specialist, it was his duty to extract team members from hostile situations. "Commander, I'm proceeding to Kelvash's coordinates," he reported, his voice steady despite the unexpected development. "Proceed with extreme caution," Trasvar responded. "These are not ordinary children." Darvak acknowledged and continued his approach, his combat systems running passive scans of the surrounding area. The jungle was unnervingly quiet now. No birds, no insects, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. He reached a small clearing and paused at its edge, his sensors detecting subtle disturbances in the soil ahead. Carefully, he analyzed the pattern and identified no fewer than 7 concealed pressure plates, primitive but cunningly placed. "Amateurs," he subvocalized, calculating a path through the hazards. With precise movements, he navigated between the traps, his 6 limbs finding secure purchase on the undisturbed ground. Halfway across the clearing, he detected movement in his peripheral vision, a flash of color between the trees. Instinctively, he turned his optical sensors toward it, momentarily distracted. That was his mistake. The ground beneath his rear appendage suddenly gave way, not to a pressure plate, but to a pitfall concealed by an ingenious layer of suspended soil and vegetation. As he began to fall, Darvak attempted to engage his emergency stabilizers. But something unexpected happened. A secondary mechanism triggered, and a counterweight system launched a heavy net that wrapped around his upper body. "Tactical analysis error," he managed to transmit as he found himself suspended upside down, swinging between 2 massive trees. The visible traps were decoys. As his cloaking field failed, Darvak caught sight of small figures moving through the underbrush, approaching his position. One of them stepped into view, A human juvenile female with facial markings. Paint, he realized, in geometric patterns across her cheeks. She looked up at him, head tilted in evaluation, then spoke clearly, in a language his translator identified as English. Nice try. But you stepped on the trigger plate. Maybe next time focus less on the obvious traps. Then, with what his cultural database identified as a smirk, she added, and try again next time in English. Your subvocal communications are on a frequency our listening post picked up an hour ago. Then, she was gone, disappearing into the jungle as silently as she had appeared, leaving Darvak hanging in bewildered silence. Vesh moved cautiously, having received the distress signals from both Kelvash and Darvak. As the team's infiltration specialist, he had the highest confidence in his ability to remain undetected. His exoskeleton had been specially modified with the latest adaptive camouflage technology, changing not just color, but texture to match his surroundings with perfect fidelity. "Commander," he communicated, "I am approaching the location where we lost contact with Darvak. I detect no immediate threats." "Proceed with extreme caution," Trasvar replied. "These children are employing tactics beyond their expected capabilities." Vesh acknowledged and continued his advance, moving not along the ground but through the middle canopy of the jungle, using the dense foliage as additional cover. His tactical analysis suggested that the human juveniles would be focusing their attention at ground level, giving him a significant advantage from his elevated position. He spotted Darvak first, still suspended in the net trap, apparently powered down to conservation mode. Then, approximately 20 meters beyond, he detected another organic-looking structure that likely contained Kelvash. Vesh calculated the optimal approach vector and began moving toward his captured teammates. His confidence grew with each successful meter, gained without detection. Perhaps the commander had overestimated these human children after all. That thought had barely formed when Vesh noticed something peculiar. A thin strand of what appeared to be ordinary spider silk, spanning the gap between two branches along his planned route. Natural, he assumed, and prepared to step over it. At the last moment, his enhanced perception detected an unusual tension in the strand, too uniform to be natural. He froze, sensors expanding to maximum sensitivity. The forest around him was suddenly alive with subtle indicators he had missed. Thin filaments connecting various branches in an intricate web. Small reflective surfaces positioned at key angles among the leaves, and faint pressure differentials suggesting hidden mechanisms. "Commander," he began to report, "I believe I've identified—" A sharp snap echoed through the canopy, as Vesh's slight movement triggered not one, but an entire sequence of mechanisms. The branch beneath him abruptly retracted, a counterbalance system using nothing more than jungle vines and carefully carved wooden components. As he began to fall, multiple strands of the spider silk, actually some kind of reinforced fishing line, his analytical systems belatedly informed him, tightened around his limbs. In less than 2 seconds, Vesh found himself completely immobilized, suspended in a complex web of primitive, yet ingeniously designed snare traps. "Capture complete," came a young voice from somewhere above him. "That's 3 for 3. Eagle Patrol. Radio Falcon Patrol and tell them we've secured the north perimeter." As his cloaking technology failed, Vesh caught a glimpse of small figures moving through the canopy with surprising agility, using a system of ropes and handholds that his initial scans had completely missed. "Commander," he transmitted, the signal already weakening as some kind of interference field activated around him. "They knew we were coming. This entire area is—" His communication cut off abruptly. In the command center, they had established half a kilometer from the initial insertion point. Trasvar processed the successive failures of half his team with growing concern. Ghost Pattern 9 was comprised of the Confederation's most elite reconnaissance specialists, each with over a century of field experience. Yet they had been neutralized in rapid succession by what appeared to be human children. Tactical reassessment required, he announced to Velik and Threx, his remaining officers. These are not ordinary training exercises. The level of preparation and counterintelligence suggests they anticipated our presence. Impossible, Velik responded, her antennae twitching nervously. Our mission parameters were classified at the highest level. Even Central Command wasn't fully briefed on our insertion timeline. Nevertheless, Trasvar countered, 3 of our team have been captured using tactics specifically designed to counter our technology and methodology. He paused, compound eyes shifting as he considered the implications. We need more information before we can extract our team safely. Commander, Threx interjected, her voice unusually hesitant. I've been analyzing the communication patterns we've intercepted. There's something inconsistent. Explain. The structured military protocols are interspersed with... She searched for the appropriate term. Playfulness, laughter, competitions for points and badges. It doesn't match any known human military training regimen in our database. Trasvar considered this information, his exoskeleton shifting subtly as he processed the contradictory data. New intelligence suggests humans employ psychological conditioning techniques disguised as recreational activities for their juvenile warriors. This could be confirmation of those reports. Or, Velik offered cautiously, we could be misinterpreting their activities entirely. There's only one way to be certain. Trasvar decided. Threx and I will conduct a direct reconnaissance of their central facility. Velik, maintain position, and prepare the craft for immediate extraction if necessary. Commander, Velik protested, regulations require... Regulations didn't anticipate 3 of our team being captured by children. Trasvar cut her off. We adapt to the situation. That's what Ghost Pattern 9 does. Without waiting for further discussion, Trasvar activated his enhanced stealth protocols and gestured for Threx to follow. Together, they disappeared into the dense jungle, moving with even greater caution than before. As they approached the coordinates, where their team's tracking devices had gone silent, Trasvar detected a change in the vegetation, subtle signs of regular passage. Branches, carefully pruned to create corridors, while maintaining the appearance of wild growth. Someone had been shaping this jungle, creating a defensive perimeter that was virtually invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. Stay close, he instructed Threx. Step exactly where I step. They advanced slowly, Trasvar's enhanced senses scanning continuously for the traps that had captured their teammates. Several times he identified trip mechanisms and guided Threx safely around them. The level of ingenuity in the designs troubled him deeply. They were simple enough to be constructed from local materials, yet sophisticated enough to neutralize advanced GC technology. After 30 minutes of careful navigation, they reached the edge of a larger clearing. Trasvar signaled for absolute stillness as they observed the scene before them. In the center of the clearing stood a complex of structures, not the permanent military installation Trasvar had expected, but rather a collection of temporary shelters constructed from local materials. Canvas stretched over wooden frames, platforms elevated in the trees connected by rope bridges, and at the center, a large fire pit surrounded by log seating. Most disturbing of all was the sight of their 3 captured teammates, secured to trees at the edge of the clearing. They appeared undamaged, but thoroughly immobilized by combinations of rope, vine, and what looked like strips of colorful fabric. Around the camp moved at least 20 human juveniles, ranging in estimated age from 8 to 14 standard years. They wore matching uniforms, khaki-colored shorts and shirts with various colored patches and insignia. Some carried primitive projectile weapons, bows and slingshots, while others worked on constructing additional fortifications or tending to what appeared to be cooking stations. "What is this place?" Threx whispered, her voice barely audible even through their direct communication link. Before Trasvar could respond, a high-pitched sound cut through the jungle, some kind of whistle. Immediately, the children's activities ceased, and they began to form orderly lines in the center of the clearing. An older juvenile, perhaps 15 or 16 years, emerged from the largest structure. This one wore a more elaborate uniform with additional decorations across the chest and carried what Trasvar recognized as a ceremonial staff of some kind. "Eagle Patrol, report!" the leader called out. A group of children stepped forward, and one of them, the same female who had captured Darvak, spoke clearly. "Eagle Patrol reporting. Senior Patrol Leader. 3 intruders captured and secured as ordered. Perimeter defenses holding." "Wolf Patrol, report!" Another group stepped forward. Their leader, a small male with unusually bright red facial hair. "Wolf Patrol reporting. South perimeter secure. Observation posts established as directed. No additional contacts detected." This continued until all groups, patrols, Trasvar corrected mentally, had reported their status. The precision and discipline displayed was unsettling. These were children, yet they operated with the coordination of veteran military units. "Excellent work, Scouts," the senior patrol leader announced. "Phase 1 of Wilderness Defense Week is complete. Now we move to Phase 2, the interrogation and processing of our alien invaders." A ripple of excitement passed through the assembled children, and Trasvar felt his thoracic cavity constrict with concern. Interrogation protocols were strictly regulated under Confederation law, but humans had always been notoriously creative in their methods. "Threx," he subvocalized, "prepare to—" His instruction was cut short as something small and hard struck the tree beside his head with remarkable precision. Trasvar froze, his compound eyes shifting to identify the projectile, a small stone, launched from a slingshot held by a juvenile who was staring directly at their position despite their active cloaking. "I see you," the child said simply, pointing directly at them. "Your light-bending technology doesn't account for the way dew drops bend around your outline. Wolf Patrol, we have 2 more visitors at Sector 7. Before either Trasvar or Threx could react, the jungle erupted with activity. Children seemed to materialize from the vegetation on all sides, some dropping from the canopy above, others rising from concealed positions in the underbrush. Each held some form of primitive weapon, all aimed with disturbing accuracy at their position. "You should come out now," the senior patrol leader called, approaching confidently. "Your friends are unharmed, and you will be too if you cooperate." Trasvar performed a rapid tactical assessment. Their cover was blown, they were outnumbered, and half their team was already captured. Standard protocol would dictate a fighting retreat. But these were children. Engagement with non-combatants was strictly forbidden under Confederation law. With no viable alternatives, Trasvar made his decision. He deactivated his cloaking field, his exoskeleton returning to its natural iridescent blue. Beside him, Threx followed suit, her expression unreadable to any but the most studied xenobiologist. "I am Commander Trasvar of the Galactic Confederation Reconnaissance Unit Ghost Pattern 9, he announced formally. "You have illegally detained 3 of my officers. Release them immediately." The senior patrol leader approached, showing no fear, despite Trasvar's imposing, armored form towering over him. The human juvenile stopped just out of reach and performed what Trasvar recognized as a formal salute. "Senior Patrol Leader Marcus Wilson, Camp Orion, Troop 415, the boy responded with equal formality. "Your officers triggered our perimeter defenses and were captured according to the rules of engagement for Wilderness Defense Week. They will be released at the conclusion of today's exercises." Trasvar's translator struggled momentarily with the unfamiliar terminology. "Camp Orion? What military designation is that?" The question seemed to confuse the senior patrol leader. "Military. This isn't military, sir. This is Boy Scouts. We're having our annual Wilderness Survival Jamboree." Threx stepped forward cautiously. "You are not military training cadets?" This elicited laughter from several of the surrounding children, quickly silenced by a sharp look from their leader. "No, ma'am," Marcus replied politely. We're a youth organization that teaches wilderness skills, citizenship, and leadership. This week we're practicing defense and security merit badges. Trasvar's compound eyes shifted rapidly as he attempted to process this information. A youth organization that could capture 3 of his elite reconnaissance officers? That employed sophisticated counter-surveillance techniques and military-grade tactical coordination. Your communication protocols, he pressed. The defensive perimeter, the capture techniques. These are all military in nature. Marcus shrugged. A human gesture Trasvar's cultural database identified as indicating casual dismissal. Our scoutmaster was in the Special Forces. He says these skills are useful for any wilderness situation. And this year's theme is aliens in the woods. You guys actually made it super realistic. Before Trasvar could formulate a response to this bewildering explanation, a series of short whistle blasts echoed through the clearing. The children immediately turned their attention to the center of the camp, where an adult human male had appeared. Unlike the juveniles, this human wore a simple green uniform without elaborate decorations, though Trasvar noted with concern the way he moved, balanced, aware, scanning his surroundings with practiced efficiency. This was a warrior, regardless of his current role. "Scouts, form up for the evening ceremony," the man called out. "Bring our guests of honor." To Trasvar's alarm, the children began herding him and Threx toward the central fire pit, where their 3 captured teammates were already being positioned. Not with force, he noted, but with a curious mixture of excitement and formality. "Circles within circles," Marcus explained as they walked. "We always conclude each day's activities with a ceremonial circle. You're our special guest tonight." Trasvar glanced at Threx, who subtly indicated she was recording everything for later analysis. With no clear threat, but equally no opportunity for escape, they allowed themselves to be guided to positions of prominence beside the fire, which was now being lit by one of the juvenile patrols. As darkness fell over the jungle moon, Trasvar found himself in perhaps the most unusual situation of his 3-century career. Seated on a log beside a ceremonial fire, surrounded by human children who had successfully neutralized his entire elite reconnaissance team, participating in what they were calling a campfire ceremony. The adult human, who had introduced himself as Scoutmaster Johnson, stood at the center of the circle, illuminated by the dancing flames. Behind him, a pole had been erected from which hung a piece of colored fabric that Trasvar's database identified as a flag bearing unfamiliar insignia. "Scouts, attention for the evening colors," the scoutmaster called. As one. The children rose and stood at rigid attention, each placing their right hand over the left side of their thoracic region, where humans housed their primary circulatory pump. Trasvar recalled. What followed was entirely unexpected. The children began to sing, their young voices rising in unison in what Trasvar's cultural database identified as an anthem. The lyrics spoke of honor, courage, and duty, concepts universal enough that even his alien perspective could recognize their significance. "We are scouts, strong and free, serving humanity. In the darkness, in the light. Eagle's wings take endless flight." The song continued, accompanied by formal gestures and synchronized movements. It was not the martial chant Trasvar had expected, but something more complex, a reaffirmation of shared values and identity. When the anthem concluded, the scoutmaster called forth representatives from each patrol to report on the day's activities. Each juvenile spoke with surprising eloquence about their accomplishments, the skills they had practiced, and the lessons they had learned. There was competitive spirit evident in their reports. Each patrol clearly sought to outperform the others, but it was tempered by mutual respect and encouragement. Then came the moment Trasvar had been dreading since their capture. "And now," announced the scoutmaster, "the highlight of today's wilderness defense exercise, the alien interrogation." The children erupted in excited chatter, and Trasvar tensed, preparing for whatever bizarre human ritual was to follow. Beside him, Threx's exoskeleton shifted to a defensive configuration. "Eagle Patrol," the Scoutmaster continued. "As the successful capture team, you have earned the right to ask our visitors the 3 questions of interstellar diplomacy." From the group of children, the patrol that had captured Darvak stepped forward. Their leader, the young female with facial markings, approached and stood before Trasvar with formal dignity. "Question 1, she said, her voice clear and confident. "What is your favorite color in the galaxy, and why does it make you happy?" Trasvar's compound eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. His tactical analysis systems, primed for interrogation resistance, struggled to categorize this query. We perceive the spectral range differently than humans," he found himself explaining. "But the emanations from your star class K2 produce wavelengths that our species finds aesthetically optimal." The girl nodded seriously and made a note on a small device. "Thank you for sharing. Question 2. If you could teach us one thing about space that would make us better explorers, what would it be?" Again, Trasvar found himself momentarily at a loss. Was this some form of psychological warfare designed to disarm him through apparent innocence? Or was it genuinely as simple as it appeared? Children curious about alien perspectives. "Patience," he finally answered. "Space is vast beyond human comprehension. The greatest explorers understand that observation often reveals more than intervention." This elicited murmurs of approval from the assembled scouts, and several made notes in small bound books they carried. "Final question," the patrol leader announced. "Will you join us for s'mores and tell us about the stars from your homeworld?" At this, Trasvar turned to Threx, who appeared equally bewildered. "S'mores?" he queried his database, which returned only partial information about a traditional human campfire food involving roasted plant derivatives and processed carbohydrates. "We are unable to consume human nutrition," Threx explained diplomatically. "But we would be willing to discuss astronomical phenomena," Trasvar added, making a command decision that diplomatic engagement was preferable to continued confusion. This answer seemed to satisfy the patrol leader, who stepped back and formally announced, "Interrogation complete. The aliens have passed the friendship test." The entire assembly of scouts cheered, and to Trasvar's surprise, began untying his captured officers. Kelvash, Darvak, and Vesh were released with ceremonial handshakes, a human greeting gesture involving mutual gripping of manipulator appendages, and presented with small fabric patches bearing unfamiliar symbols. "Honorary members of Eagle Patrol," Marcus explained, presenting a similar patch to Trasvar, "for being good sports about the whole thing." As the evening progressed, Trasvar found himself in the unprecedented position of watching his elite reconnaissance team engage in cultural exchange with human juveniles around a campfire. Kelvash was demonstrating the bioluminescent capabilities of his species to an enthralled group. Darvak, surprisingly, was showing interested scouts the proper technique for tying various knots. Even Vesh had been drawn into explaining the principles of adaptive camouflage to the patrol that had captured him. During a momentary lull in the activities, Trasvar approached the scoutmaster, who was monitoring the interactions with evident satisfaction. "I must confess," Trasvar said carefully, "we mistook your scout camp for a military training facility." Scoutmaster Johnson chuckled, a sound Trasvar's cultural database associated with human amusement. "You're not the first. Something about kids in uniforms learning wilderness skills makes people jumpy." He gestured toward the various activities around the camp. "But look closer. Yes, they're learning skills that might have military applications: orienteering, signaling, first aid, tracking, but they're also learning cooperation, leadership, environmental stewardship." Trasvar observed the interactions with new perspective. There was indeed something different here from military training. The children competed, but they also assisted one another, They followed commands, but they also questioned and explored. It was structured, yet adaptive in a way that rigid military hierarchy rarely achieved. "Your scouts captured 3 of my best officers," Trasvar noted, still unable to fully reconcile this fact. The scoutmaster smiled. "Kids are underestimated. They're creative, they think differently, and they don't know what's supposed to be impossible." He glanced at Trasvar with sudden seriousness. "That's something both our species could learn from, don't you think?" Before Trasvar could formulate a response, a commotion at the edge of the camp drew their attention. One of the observation posts was signaling with a pattern of flashing lights that even Trasvar recognized as an alert code. The senior patrol leader rushed to the scoutmaster's side. "Sir, perimeter sensors are picking up multiple approaching vessels. Large ones." Trasvar felt his thoracic cavity constrict. "The extraction team," he realized aloud. "When we failed to report in, Central Command would have dispatched recovery forces." He turned to the scoutmaster, urgency in his voice. "You must evacuate immediately. They will not understand this." He gestured to the camp, the children, the entire improbable scenario. The scoutmaster's expression hardened, and Trasvar saw the warrior emerge from beneath the educator's demeanor. In rapid succession, he issued clear, concise orders that the scouts responded to with practiced efficiency. "Wolf Patrol, initiate Protocol Thunderbird. Eagle Patrol, secure the campsite for rapid departure. Falcon Patrol, escort our guests to the rendezvous point. Everyone else, grab your emergency packs and prepare to move out. 2 minutes. People." The camp erupted into organized activity. Children quickly dismantled structures, packed equipment, and extinguished fires. Within 90 seconds, Trasvar timed it with grudging admiration. The clearing that had held a vibrant camp was nearly empty, with only minimal evidence of human presence. "You should go," Marcus told Trasvar, handing him a small wooden token carved with unfamiliar symbols. "This is for you, a wilderness survival token. You've earned it." Before Trasvar could respond, the scouts had melted into the jungle with their scoutmaster, leaving Ghost Pattern 9 alone in the clearing. In the distance, the distinctive sound of GC dropships could be heard approaching. "Commander," Velik's voice came through their communication system. "I've detected multiple GC vessels entering the atmosphere. Tactical Fleet 17B has been deployed to our location." "Acknowledged," Trasvar responded, looking at the wooden token in his manipulator appendage. "We will rendezvous at the extraction point." As his team regrouped and moved toward their landing craft, Trasvar made a decision that would alter his 3-century career. "Team," he announced, "our mission report will indicate that we detected unusual activity, but found no evidence of permanent human military presence in this sector." Threx's antennae twitched in surprise. "But Commander, regulations require accurate assessment of threats to Confederation security," Trasvar interrupted. "What we encountered here was not a threat." He paused, mandibles clicking softly as he considered his next words. "It was education, of a kind we might benefit from studying rather than eradicating." The team moved in silence for several moments, processing this unexpected directive. "Besides," Darvak added, holding up the patch he had been given, "I would not wish to explain to Central Command how we were captured by juvenile humans, engaged in recreational activities." This elicited the GC equivalent of laughter from the team, a harmonic vibration of their thoracic communication organs. Even Trasvar joined in, his normal stern demeanor momentarily set aside. By the time Tactical Fleet 17B had landed and deployed search teams, there was little to find. They discovered the remains of campfires, carefully filled in to prevent forest fires. They found the remnants of climbing ropes and primitive shelters, most of which had been deliberately dismantled. And in one clearing, they discovered a simple wooden sign bearing the inscription, "Camp Orion, Week 2, Wilderness Defense. See you next year." The commander of Fleet 17B, ordered a thorough sweep of the entire moon, employing advanced scanning technology to detect any human presence. But the scouts had vanished as completely as if they had never been there, leaving behind only subtle traces that could easily be attributed to natural phenomena. In his official report to Central Command, Commander Trasvar described encountering a temporary human youth wilderness training encampment that dispersed upon our arrival and posed no strategic threat to Confederation interests. He recommended periodic monitoring, but no additional resource allocation to this sector. What he did not include in his report was his private assessment that the Galactic Confederation had significantly underestimated human adaptability and ingenuity. He did not mention that their most sophisticated stealth technology had been defeated by children using sticks, stones, and rudimentary understanding of optical physics. And he certainly did not report that hanging in his private quarters aboard the reconnaissance vessel was a small fabric patch bearing the image of an eagle and the words, "Honorary Scout, Camp Orion." 3 standard months later, Commander Trasvar requested reassignment to the Diplomatic Corps, citing valuable cross-species cultural experience as his primary qualification. His request was granted with some confusion by Central Command, who couldn't understand why one of their most decorated reconnaissance officers would choose such a radical career change. On the day he left military service, a small package arrived in his quarters. Inside was a simple ceramic mug bearing the inscription, "I survived Wilderness Defense Week." There was no sender identified, but Trasvar noted that the delivery originated from a shipping point near the human colony on Proxima Centauri b. He kept the mug on his desk in his new diplomatic office, and when colleagues inquired about its significance, he would simply say it was a reminder that understanding often comes from unexpected sources. Meanwhile, in classified GC intelligence reports, there began to appear occasional mentions of similar temporary encampments detected and then lost on at least 3 other border moons. Each time, reconnaissance teams would arrive to find nothing but cooling campfires, clever defensive structures, and sometimes, if they were particularly observant, the faint smell of roasted marshmallows and chocolate, what humans called s'mores, lingering in the alien air. And if GC sensors occasionally detected small footprints where none should be, or picked up juvenile laughter on frequencies that should have been secure, these anomalies were generally attributed to equipment malfunction rather than the more disturbing possibility that the forests and mountains of disputed space had become the playground and classroom for the next generation of human explorers, learning not just how to survive in the wilderness, but how to thrive there. In the end, perhaps that was the most important lesson Commander Trasvar had learned from his encounter with Camp Orion, that the future belongs not to those with the most advanced technology or the most rigid discipline, but to those who approach the universe with curiosity, adaptability, and the innocent wisdom that only the young can truly possess. For in the vastness of space, there will always be room for scout troops to gather around campfires, sharing stories of the day they captured alien invaders with nothing but ingenuity, teamwork, and the simple belief that anything is possible if you're prepared.